in the last 20 years, life has changed. We've all lived long enough to know 20 years ago and remember it. Okay, so what has that meant for estate planning? Because estate planning has changed a lot. Who here has got an ordinary sort of will, everything to each other and then to the kids in equal shares type will? Who's got one of those? You all have got that. That's really naughty. Because those wills are no longer appropriate for our complex world and the kind of money that you and I are going to leave when we pass away in our estates. Now, I know you say you're going to spend it all, but your timing, you never get it down to that timing where you're at your last dollar and then you die. It's just not going to happen. You know, clients say that to me all the time. So you spend it, you worked for it, you spend it, you go for it. But you really need to still have your roof over your head, and don't you? Yeah. And you need something in the bank. You can't just be with nothing. And you're not the type to do it, because you're baby boomers sort of, you know, aren't you? And you're conservative. You're not going to do stupid things like children are taxed concessionally, highly concessionally, in testamentary trusts. I mean really concessionally. So each child has a tax-free threshold of what? $16,000 at 0% per child every year. So what he does, a trust is taxed down at this level. So as a trustee, you can assign in your tax return the income of the trust to anybody in your pool of beneficiaries. I'll say that one more time, if I can remember it. The trustee can elect who pays tax on that $30,000 out of the pool of beneficiaries, okay? So Sam, knowing his children are concessionally taxed, is going to say in his tax return for the trust tax return, $30,000 profit and $15,000 to child one and $15,000 to child two. And you're going to pay how much tax? The other good thing about these trusts is they have some asset protection, right? Because if Sam gets sued, right, because he drove his car and he was drinking and the insurance didn't cover him and he ran someone over or something like that, his assets are on the line, aren't they? So if I've given him the inheritance in his own name, those assets are on the line, aren't they? And they're going to go straight out the door. But in the trust, isn't the trust a separate legal person? And the trust hasn't run anyone over, has it? Okay? So we have now some asset protection. And it's also helpful in a family court action, which is far more likely. Because what's the divorce rate now? Isn't it like 55%? That's high odds, isn't it? What happened? When did we get to this point, guys? But that's where we are. And so it's probably slightly more likely than not that Sam will have a divorce. Well, at least one in his lifetime. And I'm telling you, if you see people come to you that have been through a couple of divorces, their assets are halved and then halved again, you know, and they're now in their 50s and they've got a quarter of the assets they had before. That's really hard. That's really interesting. Haven't talked about protective trusts for children with impairments. That's really important. But we do know a bit more, don't we? We do know a bit more now. We know that we have got a vehicle for our wills that gives a really good tax-effective inheritance with asset protection. So that's good news. That's good news. We know that family provision claims are greatly on the increase, but we also know there are strategies to avoid them. So that's good news too. But it's a real threat and it's happening more than you want to know. And if you have a child that needs protection, either because they're an addict or because they have an impairment, you definitely need a trust for them, okay? And that will make sure that their inheritance is maintained when you're not there to look after it. We can look at protective trusts for them.